Good morning. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's session with Lisa Sarami. My name is Jessie, and I'm on the Access Elite team that has brought this event to you today. For those of you who have logged on to one of our events before, welcome back. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, Access Elite is a health and wellness company that provides on-demand wellness content, same-day prescription delivery, and facilitates live virtual events such as these, as well as much more. We at Access Elite are so glad to facilitate this event and bring a little bit of positivity and connection to your day. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. Lisa is a marriage and family therapist, meditation guide, and yoga instructor. With that, Lisa, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. It's always such an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to continue on our dream series today. So without further ado, I'm just going to share my screen here. So we are at the fourth series of these 5 series of dream interpretation. And today we're going to actually be revisiting the 4-step approach, diving into the 3rd step, really exploring like what are dream interpretations, some tips at this level in the game on how to really discern what is the authentic interpretation of our dream for ourselves, and then 4 principles that we can use to help validate our interpretations. And the book to the right here, called Inner Work by Robert Johnson, is the book that I studied and researched and have been working with throughout this series. So if you've missed any of them, don't worry, grab the book or maybe watch the recordings. I think Access Elite might have recordings in the future of this. So that 4-step approach, if you've been with us or maybe you're just joining us today, are 1, making associations with the images that arise in our dreams. 2, connecting the dreams to and images to the symbolism that works within our inner dynamics. So that's what we did last week. And after these two building blocks, I don't know why I can't talk today, 2 building blocks, we can then really dive into the interpreting of the images that are appearing in our dreams. And then next week, as we wrap up our Dreamwork series, we'll be getting into incorporating ritual, the 4th step of the approach. So just opening up that dream interpretation, you might consider that the interpretation ties together all of the meaning that you've drawn from the dream into one. It's one unified picture that helps you really deepen that understanding of what's working in your unconscious, because dreams are really a reflection of a lot of things that we kind of put more into the unconscious space of our psyche because maybe we're not ready to face it in a conscious way. So it helps when we're starting to dive into interpretation to ask ourselves, what is the central, most important message that this dream is trying to communicate to me? Don't expect that it's just going to click and be coherent the very first time you try. And the thing that's tricky about that, if you've been joining us, is we've learned that although images may show up, they're not always literal. And last week we were diving into how do these images represent different parts of our own inner dynamics. And now we're really taking them a farther step back and saying, now that I've looked at all this, what is all this trying to communicate to me? And it's not going to necessarily always be very intuitive. And then when it clicks, though, that's when it's going to feel like, oh, I really, really get it. So it's trying on, just like when you would go shopping and try on different clothes, it's trying on various interpretations of your dreams that you're able to see and see how they've grown out of the first couple steps of your dream work. So let's get into some tips around how do we do this interpretation? So choosing between alternatives. So as you start to open up all these possibilities of what the images and the symbolism in your dream is trying to communicate, you want to look between alternatives to really decide which interpretation feels right. You're looking for where the dream comes off the paper and ignites the abstraction into a form that can be seen clearly. And I'm going to give you an example today. So, and I want you to I really want to encourage you to use paper to pen. It's really magical what happens. I don't know what it is about that contact of paper to pen, but when you're starting to try to filter through the different interpretations, and we should have already been doing that in the first 2 steps. So if you had been, it's going to really help open things up beyond maybe what would be available if you're not putting paper to pen. And by putting paper to pen, then we're in a place where we can begin to choose between alternatives. The next tip is really kind of determining what's the energy of the intensity. We talked about how dreams a lot of times will come forward and the intensity, it'll be turned up. Things will be very exaggerated. So you want to really just look like what has the energy behind the dream. And if the interpretation that you're considering begins to arouse strong feelings inside of you, or begins to open up insights that you feel that charge, those are the ones that you might really want to consider. You might also look at what other areas of your life could this interpretation also fit? Can it support you to liberate the energy and the patterns behind the interpretation? So we talked about how sometimes we may even have the same dream. Sometimes it's not the same dream. There's the pattern in how it feels and the energy behind those patterns. And so what's really maybe being called for if you keep having that dream is that it wants to be liberated. And then when you write out other interpretations, you might find that there's no energy in it, right? It might make sense on some level, but then that's missing. It's like that chemistry, that alchemical charge just isn't there. So what are we looking for? Where do we feel connected to the interpretation? And how we would know is the energy that begins to reveal itself in the level of intensity, which we call a charge when we're doing our dream interpretation. The other tip I want to give you is really just following small cues. Clues. I read it, but what it should say is clues. So in our dreams, and when we're doing our dream work, we'll notice there's these small details and there's these clues that really begin to help us inform our interpretation and to follow those clues into the dream. It might be a color. It might be just a small little detail that it feels odd that even that much attention would be given to. The dream is woven together by the details, like color, location, and other clues. So we're really looking for those clues. And actually, when you're choosing the images that you might want to work with, I would say that those are how you're kind of determining what are they. And then that next layer helps us get into the deeper levels of symbolism. And those clues, they just simply help us deepen our understanding of a situation that we're in that maybe otherwise would feel totally unambiguous, or maybe you would just feel that it's a literal reflection of what's happening in your life. The other thing that's really powerful to do is to argue from opposites. So not coming clear. Play devil's advocate. Sit on both sides of the argument and argue it. Pretend you're like a lawyer, and first you would be on one side of the argument and then you would be the other. The unconscious is fair with us, and it does allow our egos to do what they insist on doing. So as long as we can take responsibility for our choices, then we are kind of freed up, right? And when we start to argue from the opposites, we can get closer to that. In fact, the unconscious will push us into one suffering after the other, one impossible mess after the other, until we are ready to wake up and to see that it is us choosing and us responsible for taking the actions. So let's see, what's this next slide? Okay, I'll do this slide and then I want to share a story with you. So 4 principles that you can rely on when you're trying to validate these different interpretations that maybe are presenting themselves is 1, choose one that's showing you something you didn't know, because we know that this content is coming from the unconscious, and so it's coming from this space of outside of our knowledge, outside of what we're being able to see. We want to avoid that interpretation that's going to like inflate our ego and congratulate ourselves, right? Because usually the content that's in the unconscious is our shadow stuff. It's the stuff that we really aren't proud of, that we don't want to be seen for. Or it could be a part of us that is not being fully utilized. It's kind of hidden, like our potential. So again, it's more of the shadowy type stuff rather than the ego and the bloating type content. And also, if your interpretation is taking you into a place where it shifts responsibility away from yourself, again, that's going to be an example of where you might be supported in this principle when you're looking at different interpretations and being able to choose the one. And then also dreams, like we're constantly digesting this content that's really a lifetime that's in our unconscious. So think of them as a long-term way to nibble away, right? We've probably most heard of that saying, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. When I would work with clients with grief and loss, I would always say, you know, you're going to get what you can and you're going to metabolize it. And then it's going to come again in a different wave because you're going to be ready for that wave. Your unconscious kind of works in a similar way as grief. What you can digest is going to come to the surface. And as you work with that content, slowly it will begin to dissolve itself. And then that next layer of what's sitting in the unconscious is going to want to come through and be worked with. So I want to use an example just real quick of a dream that I was working with a client of mine this morning. The main image that was showing up was that she has a friend, and her friend is a social friend, but also somebody that she is a colleague with professionally. And the way she views her friend is that this woman is very sweet, but really has a hard time kind of keeping things together. So she had a dream that she was with her friend and that her friend's head fell off and started to roll down the street. And she went and grabbed her head and gave it back to her to put back on. And if we were to maybe look at this from a literal place, we might look at the dream and just say, oh, well, that makes sense. That's kind of the way her friend is. And she probably holds space and supports her as a friend and maybe helps her put her head back on at times. But if we're going to take the Robert Johnson inner work approach, and we were to look at these images as her and I did, more from a place of what are these inner dynamics that are showing up, what we would actually see and what we discovered this morning is that this part of her friend is also a part of herself, like this characteristic of feeling scattered, not feeling structured, not feeling like she has it together, and kind of feeling all over chaotically all over the place. So we could say that the image of her friend in her dream is actually a reflection of this aspect of herself. And what was really interesting and beautiful about the dream, as we continued to work with it, is that she was able to see in the end of it all that herself, representing herself, is picking up the head, which is her own head, and putting it back on. Now, when we looked at what's happening situationally in her life, she just had come out of a divorce in the last few years. She's in a place where she just finally got her own place. She transitioned from living with her parents for a short period of time. And so this container she's cultivated is now starting to help her feel a little more empowered within herself and capable of being a little more organized. So if she went with the literal translation, it would have been about her friend, and she would have missed that this is really about her. And some of those tips that we went through today are how her and I were able to get to that final interpretation. So always as a reminder, when we're doing dream interpretation and we're doing dream work, it's always not that simple. Sometimes it can be a lot more complex. We want to be courageous. We want to remember that it takes courage. It takes our openness and our curiosity. It takes our willingness to slow down and to really look at each one of these images as they arise and what they're symbolizing, and to be patient with ourselves and to be patient with the dream and what's trying to be expressed. And all of this is so sacred. It's really your deepest, mysterious parts of yourself. So really showing up with that self-care and that willingness so you feel really supported to meet some of the aspects of yourself that maybe have been difficult to look at in the past. And this leads me to why I work the way that I work with people. I like to just kind of let people know. I bring in a lot of yoga, whether it's the ethics or the actual physical practices or the breath practices or the meditation practices. And with clients, we use those tools to help empower them to cultivate a sense of agency, to be able to create a sense of safety within themselves, regardless of what the situations are that they are facing. And also by being able to cultivate that, then we can do deeper work. We can start to look at dreams. We can do active imagination. We can do personification. We can use art, myth, metaphor, and symbol. So I work through a depth psychological perspective so that we can do that deeper work that is extremely transformative for us. And with the relationship with Access Elite, you are able to get really discounted offering if this is something that you're interested in and maybe you wanted to explore on a one-on-one situation. But next week, we're going to be getting into rituals, which is the fourth step in our dream work. I hope you return, and I hope that maybe there's a dream you've been working on that's been empowering you through these series. And let's see. We got plenty of time for questions. I wanted to leave that open as far as our time today so that I know some of you have been working with your own dreams, that if there's anything you want to ask or about the content today, we can have that time today.
I have a question, actually.
Sure, Jessie.
Sometimes I will wake up and have a feeling about my dreams or some like general sadness or happiness or something, but I can't really remember the dream.
Yeah.
Are there any practices like before bed or herbal supplements or anything that I should try to like remember them more clearly, like color and specific elements?
I know that there are some herbal supplements that you could work with. I just don't know specifically what they would be. The things that I usually tell my clients to work with is just ritual, kind of like we're going to get into next week, but just kind of like, well, gosh, if you have a hard time remembering your dreams, start to ask your unconscious before you go to bed. Maybe even use something physical, like it could be a crystal. I'm just because I have it here. Here's a little rose quartz angel, something that you infuse the intention of, like, I want to remember my dreams, and place it underneath your pillow. You could think of it as a prayer or request to the mystery. And what I found is that you're calling it in, you know what I mean? Sometimes helps. And then the other thing that we have to do with it is dreams are very fleeting. So they come in, and within the first 10 seconds from when we open our eyes, they will go away a lot of times. So we want to capitalize that time. So whether it's having a recorder right next to your bed or a pen and paper, something that within that 10 seconds of opening your eyes where we're groggy even, that we can capture some of the images, some of the feelings. And when you're doing it, you want to talk about the dream. Like when I work with a client and they're speaking their dream to me, I ask them to speak it as though it is happening. So for example, this morning she said, I was walking down the street, and Amy's, whoops, I shouldn't have said her name, but Amy's head just fell off. And then I start to move to grab it. So it's very like happening right now. And because sometimes it's hard for us to remember our dreams, when we speak it in that way, sometimes it gives us access to expand on what actually was happening in the dream, as far as just remembering images or feelings or anything else that's going to help us open it up more when we go into interpretation.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Thank you.
You got it. I know we have somebody on the call. Oh, maybe she messaged, hold on, in the chat, but that had asked me, yes, I saw you there, and I was like, I'm sure she's got some questions. So absolutely unmute yourself. We got some time, so let's take advantage of it.
Yeah, sorry, it's me again.
Don't apologize. Thank you for being here.
What happened was I'm actually doing the dream diary myself. So
great.
Because one of my friend, she's been taking her dream every single day, and then that's more than I think 10 years. So now she's getting the message. So I was interested in it. I started doing myself, but the beginning was very hard to remember what was my dream, but now I get used to. So last night my dream was not really happy one, because the blood coming, so I was not really sure how, but my leg was cut it and with the sword, I think. And then I saw myself seeing the blood coming out loud, and asking to help me, or actually asking someone to bring me the rope so I can tie my legs, and then the blood stopped. That was when it stopped. I felt it's good, but not much, like almost no feeling. The before was when breathing, I saw the wind breathing coming out was scary, but when the rope tied and the blood stopped, fine, nothing happened. So I was not really sure. Yeah.
I remember a little bit about our conversation last week. So I'm just going to share an idea with you, and then tell me if this might fit.
Yeah.
And that idea is, if I remember correctly, you're kind of in a transition where...
Yeah, I got laid off a few weeks ago, and I'm thinking of shifting to new career, because I used to work in the finance industry, and it's very stable job. So I was doing the remote work. So every time when I log in, log off, and then automatically the money comes in, but I was not really happy about it. I was not really enjoy my work. Meanwhile, I was more interested into spiritual things, like you're doing yoga or going to the power spot, and then the search of a law of attraction, the law of mind, that kind of stuff. And now I have a knowledge about that. So I want to shift a little bit about sharing my knowledge with other people, and also support or helping other people. So, but that's, I don't know if I really want to go that way, or still keep and do it something like a part-time. So yeah, it's, the transition now. Yes.
Sure. So I think about, so here it is, it's your leg in this dream that we're talking about last night. When we think about our legs, or when you think about legs, what do legs represent? What is some symbolism of the legs?
Grounding, maybe? Grounding myself?
Grounding.
Yeah. I don't know.
And when you feel grounded, you might feel stable.
Yes.
Our legs support us. Right?
Yeah.
And they also move us from one
True.
place to another, right? They're transporters.
Mm-hmm.
And through a yogic lens, they're the root. They're your root. They're everything that's going to make you feel safe. Now, just right there, I think, okay, well, if now one of my legs is severed,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel connected to that part of myself, and it's bleeding. And that can
Yes.
feel like I lost this very stable career called finance. And now it's scary to not feel connected to yourself in that way. Yet, I think you said you tied it up, right? So that to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, asking the rope so I can tie it and the breathe stopped. Yeah.
So how are you stopping the bleeding right now in your life?
I'm not really scary, or I'm kind of calm. I'm actually happy moment because I was busy, very much busy, and then most of the time I've been working, and my freedom was only like 2 or 3 hours a day. But now I have more time and doing what I want to do. So it's comfortable actually. It's much comfortable, even though the income stopped, but still comfortable. It's a kind of weird, but yeah.
So that's the layers, right? It's like hard because as when you're working through a dream like with someone else, and we're doing it in a very short period of time, we can't go as deep into each image, right? But so I was pulling a little bit from the collective, like, okay, what are the legs? What are, but bleeding could also represent your, so like, I'm just saying, because you just recently lost your job, but if you were in a career that was not, it sounds like really fulfilling at a deeper level in your soul, maybe this is why you're feeling peaceful right now, because maybe you wouldn't have been able to do it yourself, to just quit. It would have been scary, right? And so
I actually tried 2 times to quit my job, but every time when I try to quit my job, it's something happened and didn't go forward. Yeah, it didn't mean for going forward.
So remember, the shadow material in our unconscious is that what we don't want to look at. And it's also our unrealized potential. So what's also there for me in your dream is here you are showing up in your dream. You could have had anybody else show up to heal to stop the bleeding. And it's an empowering image to me. I mean, yes, it could sound horrific that there's blood and your leg is cut. But from this other perspective, what I'm seeing is that you're the one there to stop the bleeding. And that you're recognizing that. And maybe that's where you feel the peace, is that you don't have to run and be scared, because there's this other aspect of you that is there and that's going to support you along the way.
So do you see that this image it's kind of like a soul connection? I have more following my soul mission, or what's called?
I feel like it's saying more that you can trust yourself. I think that if we were working more individually, I would be able to. What do you think is actually what I'd like to ask you? Because I think you really know the answer, because you're in your body and your mind every day and in your dreams, right? I'm just pulling from a few images you've shared.
My dream is always 2 or 3 different things, like I said before. But usually it's something good, and I mean joyful things I'm doing, and the other thing is a little bit scary. So I'm in the balance, or in the middle of maybe good, maybe not good, and still don't know yet time, I think. Yeah.
Well, here's the other download I got. Here you are, you're stopping the bleeding, but you're also a healer in that moment, right? So in respect to the content that's in your unconscious, if it's your unrealized potential and your soul has been calling you to maybe take a different role in the world with your purpose, something connected more to spirit, You know, it could literally be you showing up for yourself and representing that unrealized potential that it sounds like, just in these 2 short conversations I've had with you, like it feels like that, and it feels like you know that, and it's really scary.
It's
right?
really scary. I got to chill there.
Yeah, because it's foreign. You've never done that. You're used to a structured environment in the corporate financial world and what that represents as far as safety is concerned. And none of that includes your heartfelt longing in life or your purpose or your soul's purpose. But it does make you safe, right? When you have money coming in and you know you can eat and pay your bills and those types of things. So when you start to shift away from that, that's going to feel scary.
Yeah.
And if you know deep in your heart that you're supposed to be doing something else in this life, then that's scary to not fulfill also. It's scary not to, and it's scary to do it too. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So keep with this theme, because next week we're going to get into ritual. And the thing that's really cool about ritual, I just had another client, and you know, her and her partner are in an ending. They're ending, and they're consciously ending, which is a really beautiful thing to witness. And in supporting her process, we were designing a ritual that she's going to do with love to end the layers of the way they might define their relationship, right? They might even end up being friends, but they're not going to be lovers anymore. So we were creating a way that she can physically bury and cut those connections that are no longer there in a very loving way, so that she can then create in a different ritual. We haven't done that part yet. What they are creating is, you know, they haven't decided if they're going to be able to be friends or not be friends, right? So they're in that place. But once you close something in ritual, you can open something, right? So you're in a similar process. It sounds like your dreams are pulling this content forward. So you might even start thinking now, like, where am I at in that? And if I was going to bury something and end something and step into something new, what's a way I could do that? I mean, we live in ritual, right? Like when somebody passes, we have a funeral. Different cultures honor that in a different way. When someone's born, you know, we have bridal showers and all different kinds of things to ritualize.
Yeah.
But we're constantly going through this process in our lives, and we're not always ritualizing it within ourselves. But it's a very powerful way to work through things.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
We have time. One more question is okay, or do someone have?
What do you think, Jessie? I'm okay if she has one more question, but I know we're at 11:35. Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Often my dream, the bathroom, toilet show up. Either I am doing myself or it's stopped. Is there any toilet or bathroom is representative? Also, I am always seeing that something related to water. Could be a swimming pool, could be a lake or ocean. Is most of the time I'm swimming, but it's clear, nice, like Hawaii ocean or something. Not dirty.
Not dirty water.
But it's a toilet is actually, it's dirty. Some places dirty, maybe someone's house, toilet or bathroom. Anything it's telling me it's from this dream? Anything?
Well, let me ask you, when you're on the toilet, are people watching you, or do you have privacy?
Privacy. But sometimes no door. Or sometimes someone can peek from the bottom, but not really. I see someone's eye, but the gap is high, so everybody can see from the bottom.
So how does it feel when you're on the toilet? Do you feel
not really, not scary, but not really comfortable.
Yeah. I know this is going to sound a little gross, but do you know if you're going number 1 or number 2?
Sometimes number 2 also.
Okay. So let's look at that. What does that symbolize? When we're going to the bathroom, what are we doing?
I was thinking of maybe purifying myself.
Yeah, we're eliminating something.
Yes, releasing. Sometimes something, small things releasing, sometimes bigger, like number 2 is bigger.
Yeah, there's a lot of releasing. And we don't always want somebody there watching us either. Right? So that's why I asked that question, because sometimes when I'm working with clients and they're on a bathroom, on a toilet, a lot of times everybody's watching them. So what that is bringing forward is a lot of shame and embarrassment and those types of things. In your case, you have privacy. So I would really work with that image and the feelings to deepen it for yourself. But just like right there, that's some of the things that I'm seeing. Like there's a releasing, you have privacy, but maybe people can kind of see, maybe that makes you nervous or feel uncomfortable, that maybe people are going to judge you if you transition into a different field. Like I come from a culture where there is a lot of programming around the way people's lives should look, should not look, at a certain age, what their job should be, what their husband's job should be. You know, there's a lot of that programming, and and I've had to unprogram a lot of that so that I can be complete with where I'm at in my life, which is not what all the shoulds, right? And I say this because obviously you're also from a different country and culture, and sometimes our cultures can be judgmental, you know, and how they're viewing what we're doing or what we've been told is the right thing to do or what we should do or what we shouldn't do, you know, and that kind of comes from family of origin. So also when the image of the bathroom comes up, I think about that a little bit, like where do you maybe feel like you don't want to show others, you know, that this is a transition you want to make. Like maybe it's scary to them to see you make it. So you want to protect them in some way and not let them see it. And then the last thing I'll say about water is what I have found also, again, that's, you know, all those 2 first steps that we talked about in the last, I would do those if you haven't, but water typically represents transformation. When you're swimming in water, when you know, because there's movement, there's fluidity, and for some reason, when if you look like in the collective field, what water a lot of times will represent is transformation. Now, the fact that the water was clear, that is something, that's like one of those small clues, right? So what I would do is I would take the idea of water, I'd go back to associations, and I would get really clear with that body of water. What does that represent? Maybe it's your clarity. Maybe it's your clarity, right? Because step 1 is the associations. Step 2 is how does that show up in me? How is that me? And it's a lot of work. Sometimes it's not, because sometimes it's just like you get it right there, you know? But it's a lot of work to wash it through so that when you get to interpretation, which is step 3, what we went over today, that you can use those kind of principles to really see where is the charge, where is that intensity that is really depicting what's happening in my world. Okay. Right? The fact that the water is clear, maybe it was just the ocean and you never even would have seen clear water, right? So I would say that's a clue, and you want to go into the symbolism of what that means for you, because what's tough about the dreams it's what's in your unconscious. It's what's in your symbolism and interpretations. And, you know, maybe somebody else was in Hawaii and they got a divorce. And, you know, maybe that clear water is not representing clarity for them. It's representing something else. you know, but they could only get there through that word association and then through that next step. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, awesome. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you next week and
Yes.
you as well, Jessie, and we'll get into rituals and, you know, keep working on whatever you're working on. And we'll just keep kind of moving through those layers, and I'll definitely leave time for some openness like we did today, some questions at the end.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jessie.
Cool. And thank you everyone for joining us today. So if you love today's class, you can sign up for her next one either on the mobile app or on accessleetnow.com. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly at jromine@accessleetnow.com. Thank you guys. Hope you have a great day.
Have the best day.
See you later.